We are stuck. Despite unprecedented growth and changes in terms of technology, wealth, and knowledge, we're facing more complex issues and problems in the world than ever before. Individually, collectively, as communities, nations, as citizens of this planet. Whether it's geopolitical conflict, climate change, economic uncertainty, or a host of other global issues, all of these things are landing on our front steps. It may even be things in our own backyard. It may also even be our own individual experiences, personally and professionally. As a population of the globe and individually, we're more unhappy and unengaged than ever before. Albert Einstein once said, "We can't solve the problems we've created with the same thinking that we used in the first place." And with that in mind, I want you to join me as we try and find a different way to approach these problems and find new solutions. A different way that gives us what we're looking for. And to do this, I need to take us to the heart of today's talk, relationships. When you hear the word relationships, you often think of the close personal connections that each and every one of us have in our lives. But I'm talking about the bonds, the ties that bring all of us together as human beings. No one can dispute the importance of relationships. Evidence of relationships is everywhere in nature and in life. Newborn children rely on relationships. Without relationships, they don't have survival, they don't have security and safety. Relationships and lack of relationships means death. Young children are masters of relationships. They're able to find friends in an instant. They're able to keep that importance focused on relationships, no matter the situation or the environment they're in. But something happens as we age and we enter the larger world around us. We move into a world focused on results and outcomes. We have school and grades that remind us we need to compete and teach us that we're different from one another. We take part in sports and arts that teach us success and failure, and those remind us that our best is never good enough because there's always someone better. We also have our work, our careers, and the rest of our life that equates to success, which pushes us to be productive and to contribute. Every part of our life, every piece of our world is pushing us towards results and outcomes. It becomes a part of our fabric, a part of our being. More, better, faster. What I'm here today is to suggest that we need to step back. We need to reconnect with what we've lost, what we've known earlier in our lives, the importance of relationships, and how valuable that is to what we're seeking. The big question is, what is possible here? What could we find when it comes to relationships in this change in focus? We all have a sense that something is missing. If you've ever had the experience, the feeling of missing on deliverables or not meeting expectations, you always have that sense that there's a piece missing from the equation. If you've ever had a clash or a contradiction in terms of results and relationships, and you've had to sacrifice relationships in order to achieve results, you know that comes with a cost. And often, after the fact, we see that cost, and we have problems with it. There's also that ongoing tension where we're choosing day in, day out, small decisions, large decisions, to understand, are we choosing relationships and results? And unfortunately, results often win out. But rather than focusing on the times we don't get it right, on the times when we don't have that equation figured out, let's talk about the times when we do nail down that equation, we land in the spot we're looking for, all those times when we feel like we did a good job, got the results and relationship balance right. And let's even take a moment to think about our understanding of relationships and the people in our lives and memories we have that have taught us the importance of relationships. I can still remember the very first time that someone very important in my life helped me to understand and see the importance of relationships. When I was a young child, I would often go with my dad, who's a physician, go to one of the local hospitals. He would be doing his rounds, checking on his patients. I would sit attentively at the nursing station, just watching the busyness of life go by. One particular morning, it was a Saturday, I was 8 years old. I remember we walked into the front lobby of the hospital, and rather than our usual routine over to the elevator, up to the 7th floor, he took us over into the waiting area and he said, "Just have a seat in the corner here. I just need a few minutes." I watched as he walked across the waiting area to an older couple sitting by themselves quite quietly. I was far enough away I couldn't hear the conversation or the discussion, but I watched very closely. And I watched as he spoke to them, their heads dropped. A few moments later, they began to sob and cry uncontrollably. A few moments after that, I watched as my dad leaned in, gave one person a hug, then the other, and then held them both for a few more moments. The conversation was barely audible. Eventually, he stood up, stepped away, but I did hear them say thank you. Being 8 years old, I didn't have an appreciation for what had just happened, but I was curious enough to want to understand this experience. He came back over to me, teary-eyed, quiet, sat down next to me, and I said, "What just happened there? What was that all about?" He looked at me, took a breath, and said, "Their son, one of my patients, just died this morning, and I had to break the news to them." I processed that for a moment, and I tried to understand what I just witnessed. And I said, "Is this someone that you know? Is this a friend of the family?" He stopped and he looked at me and he said, "When you care for others, you need to treat them like your own. Everyone deserves that and is entitled to that. Remember that always." That and many other countless experiences throughout my life have really stuck with me and helped me to find my work and passion, and that brings me here with you today. Working with leaders and organizations, I help people understand the importance of relationships and how to find that balance once again. And that's what I'm hoping we can do here in the next few minutes. Before we move into this question of relationships and understanding how to reclaim what we've lost, it's really helpful to take a step back and take a look at why we've ended up where we have. Why do we have this focus, this encouraging lens on results? Where is that coming from? Everyone knows we've grown up in a complex world. The world is becoming more complex day by day, year by year. A copy of the New York Times has more information than someone in the 17th century would have seen in their entire lifetime. We have geopolitical crisis, conflict, instability, economic uncertainty, technological change, and a host of other global issues coming at us on a regular basis. We also have unprecedented mobility, and we have the ability to move information around the world in ways that our ancestors would have found unbelievable. Closer to home individually, we also have struggles and challenges of our own. Despite this technological boom, there's some irony in that people feel more disconnected and isolated than ever before. Surveys have shown that our relationship between employment, our work, the organizations we exist in are challenged. One of the number one issues identified by employees is the decreasing trust with the organizations they work for. We also have the whole question of our reward systems, school, work, other parts of our lives that are either mostly or entirely focused on results. And so we sit back and we ask ourselves, how are we here? We can't understand what's going on, but we're so immersed in the system, we can't see it and we forget it's there. So today, I'm challenging you, take a step back and take a look at what's happening in your world. big question around this idea, this philosophy of focusing on relationships is, what about the results? And don't get me wrong, results are still important. We need results. We wouldn't have the quality of lifestyle, the well-being, the understanding of ourselves, the world, the universe we exist in without results. We need change. We need improvement. We need progress. We do need results. But the question I'm putting to you is, can we find a way to rebalance that equation? Have we lost a sense of balance between relationships and results? I'm going to challenge you even further and ask you, do we need to redefine the equation? Do we need to rethink what results actually mean? Perhaps the results we are seeking are actually the relationships themselves. Maybe that's the outcome, the end goal that we're moving towards. I want you to just sit with that possibility for a minute. And if you're challenged by that and thinking, I'm not sure I quite agree with that yet, think about your own experiences. We're all here. That's a good sign that our very first caregiving relationships were a success. We've made it through childhood and into our lives. We've had nurturing relationships all along. So we do have evidence that this is going to work for us. So with all this in mind, the big question is, what do we do about it? How do we approach this? Stephen Covey had a great line that fits very nicely with this idea. How we see the problem is the problem. Can we reconfigure our view of the issue and challenge and find answers and solutions we weren't looking for, maybe even things we weren't expecting to find? If we step out of this building and out into the surrounding environment, we see systems and relationships at play, natural systems. We see life in action. These relationships have been happening long before we were here. They'll be here long past us. We also have the relationship with ourselves and our own bodies. We're going to hang on to this analogy for a moment and think about how we relate with our own bodies and what that means for other relationships in our lives and in our world. We all know what happens when we focus on only results in terms of our own bodies. Illness, poor performance, sickness, maybe even death. Not a surprise, relationships are very much the same. But the saving grace or silver lining here is we know what to do in terms of looking after our bodies. We have an intuitive sense of that relationship. We know that diet is important, discipline is important, know-how is important, support is important. So let's take that analogy and let's move that into the space of our relationships with others. Guess what we find? We connect the idea of diet to our relationships with others and ask the question, am I keeping closest the people I need most? And am I giving that opportunity to others around me, the people that need me? There's the question of discipline. How do I spend my time and energy? Where do I put my focus? Is it on relationships or is it on results? Or is it maybe even wasting time? The interesting thing with the know-how piece is that's built in for us. We've been learning the know-how of relationships since the day we were born, since we were young children. It's been modeled all along. We have that know-how. It's intuitively within us. The other bonus is support. As soon as you turn your attention, focus, energy to relationships, that materializes. Support and relationships are symbiotic. They're tied very closely together. So with all that in mind, big question comes up, what do we do with this? How do we approach things? How do we change our lives to better align results and relationships? The next time you're facing a challenge or decision or opportunity, ask yourself, have I mixed up the equation? Do I need to reconfigure how I'm seeing the problem or challenge before me? Keep in mind as well that the answers you're seeking, the things you need, are right around us. They're within us. Sometimes we just have to slow down and recognize that the challenges we face aren't as complex as we believe. It's just a matter of paying attention to what's going on around us day in and day out. And remember that time is finite. We don't have all the time in the world. We need to get this right sooner than later. My dad, who I mentioned a few moments ago, left me with a lot of learning. And one of the quotes or taglines he often shared with me is, "What you focus on is what you get and what you become." Put your time and energy towards what is important to you, what you want to become. Don't focus on the opposite. That's very true of relationships. Trust me, it makes a world of difference. Another friend of mine by the name of Scott Dinsmore is also a TEDx speaker. And he was a great presenter, spoke a lot about finding our passion in work. And tragically, he was killed overseas in a climate accident a few weeks ago. And he had a very relevant tagline: "What is the work you can't not do?" What is the work you can't not do? I'm going to borrow that from Scott and move that into another space. And I'm going to ask you, what are the relationships you can't not pay attention to? Today, right now, you need to start. The people around you need to take a lead on this, and so does the world. Thank you very much.